Ancient Egyptian beliefs changed over more than 3,000 years, and they were never written down in one single religious book or one perfectly consistent system. Different periods, different communities, and different social classes didn't always bury their dead the same way. But one idea stayed incredibly important throughout Egyptian history. People believed that life could continue after physical death, but only if that continued existence was properly protected. And that's one of the biggest reasons Egyptians built tombs in the first place. A tomb wasn't just a place to store a dead body, and it wasn't simply a giant monument built to show off someone's wealth. It was a protected space where the person's body, identity, name, images, offerings, and funerary rituals could all survive together. In other words, almost everything the deceased might need to continue existing was gathered inside one place. The earliest Egyptian burials looked nothing like the huge decorated tombs most of us picture today. Back in pre-dynastic Egypt, many people were buried in simple, shallow pits dug into the desert. Their bodies were usually placed in a curled-up position, along with pottery, jewelry, cosmetic palettes, food, and other personal belongings. Yeah? So, the dry desert climate often slowed the decay of the body naturally, even though this wasn't the sophisticated mummification that would develop thousands of years later. Those objects buried alongside the dead tell us something really important. Even long before the pyramids existed, Egyptians clearly weren't treating the dead as something meaningless. Food, jewelry, tools, and everyday possessions suggest that burial already had something to do with status, memory, ritual, and probably some form of continued existence after death. Now, we should be careful here. Why? So, as Egyptian society became more organized and centralized, tombs became much more complex. Simple burial pits gradually turned into lined graves, underground communications, mastabas, rock-cut tombs, and eventually the massive royal pyramid complexes. But even though the architecture changed dramatically, the basic goal stayed pretty much the same: protect the dead from physical harm, while keeping a carefully controlled connection between the dead and the living. That's why many Egyptian tombs were divided into two different areas. One part was completely sealed off and protected. That's where the body, the coffin, and the funerary equipment were placed. Right, friends? And the other? The other part remained accessible, so the living could bring offerings, perform rituals, say prayers, and remember the person who had died. In many tombs, family members could visit a chapel or offering room without ever entering the actual burial chamber. So an Egyptian tomb had to do two opposite jobs at the same time. It had to hide and protect the body, while also allowing the deceased to continue receiving ritual care from the living. So, you've probably heard people call Egyptian tombs the House of Eternity. That idea comes from an ancient Egyptian expression written as prut, usually pronounced something like perjet by modern Egyptologists. The word pr simply means house, while tut refers to an everlasting or eternal kind of time. So together the phrase is usually translated as House of Eternity or House of Everlasting Time. We do know this expression appears in Egyptian funerary texts, but it's also worth mentioning that we shouldn't assume every Egyptian in every period used it as the everyday name for every single tomb. Still, calling the tomb a house actually makes a lot of sense. If you look inside Egyptian tombs, you'll notice they often borrow ideas from ordinary homes. They could contain rooms, doorways, storage spaces, furniture, beds, clothing, food, containers, images of family members, and scenes from everyday life. But this wasn't just a copy of someone's house. it was an idealized home, a ritual space built for eternal existence. The tomb also played another incredibly important role. It helped preserve a person's identity. The deceased's name could be written over and over again. Their face could appear in relief carvings or paintings. Statues could represent them, and the walls might show them hunting, farming, celebrating feasts, receiving offerings, supervising workers, or standing before the gods. To us, those scenes might look like simple decoration, but to the Egyptians, they were much more than that. Words and images had real ritual power. They could help keep one's identity active and present, and that's exactly why it was such a serious act to destroy someone's name or image. It's really interesting, these beautiful ideas. We're getting to the interesting parts. Don't forget to subscribe to us, friends. We'd be really happy. However, that doesn't mean every mummy had to be perfectly preserved. Mummification changed a lot over Egypt's long history. It depended on the time period, where someone lived, how wealthy they were, and what kind of burial they could afford. Some bodies were carefully embalmed. The internal organs were removed, the body was dried with natron, treated with resins, and wrapped in fine linen. Others received much simpler treatment. In some later periods, embalmers even added padding, artificial eyes, and other materials to help restore the body's natural shape. The goal wasn't to keep the body biologically alive. It was to create a lasting, recognizable form that could be protected and connected with rebirth. That's why mummification wasn't the only layer of protection. The body was surrounded by coffins, masks, amulets, spells, stone sarcophagi, and finally, the tomb itself. Each layer helped protect the deceased from decay, damage, and even being forgotten. Coffins had a purpose beyond holding the body. So, my friends, if you enjoy this journey, join us. On this channel, we aim to increase your knowledge of art history story by story, slowly, naturally, and without giving the impression of a classroom. So if this is what you enjoy, click the subscribe button and come explore the timeline of art with us. And in the next episode, we enter the world of ancient Egyptian tombs. We start with the simplest tombs dug in the desert. Then we follow their evolution through mastabas, hidden burial chambers, and some of the most amazing monuments ever built, including the amazing pyramids of ancient Egypt. Unique.